said it already.
Yeah, I think we should.
I said the mayor can tell the city manager to tell the staff.
Yeah, let's map these first.
Stewart style.
But they're not promising.
Yeah.
Yes.
He did. He did it, and he was very strong in his role. It is not unconstitutional. It is not unconstitutional. And we have had.
I don't think he should not be saying.
We have had a stop with this policy in the city since 1994. It's called the Terry policy. What people complain about legitimately with stop and frisk is if you don't. You can't
There's
just
no way to
stop.
stop. There's no way to stop.
The way that you have to do it is you have to have probable cause. And you can stop and frisk anybody.
Well, what was disappointing is, even if he had explained that, yes, I believe if there's probable cause, he just blatantly said yes.
No. He went on to qualify. Afterwards, he said very clearly, you have to have probable cause. You have to have training and guidance on how to do it. This is the typical knee-jerk liberal reaction.
Knee-jerk. Yes, it is. You can put that on wrong issue.
What the day this is. So, yeah, I think you're right. I calculated,
Somebody be unemployed, boss.
even if we work 31 hours,
I'm in negative.
our pay is below minimum wage.
I don't think that's why we don't get a lot more candidates. I would do this again.
I don't know how Rob does it, I really don't.
Yeah.
Especially since you have a young family too. I
Yes.
just can't imagine like that. When I had that 1 year when I was doing the consulting. Pardon me?
Or we need to do some help.
Yes, we do. Oh, we had a little budget showdown this morning. So we both have a line item budget. And that be the appropriations budget. It will be a spreadsheet and we have a line item. And we will be presented with.
Where it says that.
I said, we're going to follow services. And we will have a table that shows this rebalanced budget. Not revenues exceeding the expenditures exceeding revenues.
Have you talked about the capital budget at all?
We haven't seen it. But she told us that they have.
I'm really worried. I know you're always trying to get that. Remember, I had plan A, plan B, and I always have plan B, not just any kind of business. It's always also.
No, but I'm going to go to this and he's fully enrolled. Yes. Well, he's got a pilot's license, defense experience. Yep.
We have to salary and certain for get promoted.
We don't have the spreadsheet either.
I know. We don't have to budget.
Nope. Not at that.
Oh, wait. Right, not as that. It's on the agenda.
On the agenda, but it's not at that.
Why don't you implement that? When it has to go through the planning commission, it's your other law, when it has to go through.
If it has anything to do with that, it's not. I think we need to change that to be 17, Department of Relevant Parts and Constitution, 2021, and 22.
I think the thing is, it's not really, they are only buffer.
Yeah.
The staff isn't cutting it, so we need to pay. So I don't know if they have to leave, and even Alex finds this, okay, we sound like this. So that you make Park Place.
Yeah, I said,
Park, I do that people stop. Park Place, you're coming into Indianapolis, Park Place is on your list. It's a student development, that's, it's a
articulation or anything to break up that
Do
society.
you think somebody in the city would look at that and say, do you think that massive goes?
Yeah, I know. And even I was sitting in Ellen Heights conference room
You saw
with
that?
John Harrison. We were looking at it and saying, "Oh my God!"
Okay, it was on paper.
No, we were actually looking at it going in place.
And I said to myself, I don't know if Joe or Bud. I said, no, Joe Bud's he's wanted to have a study done. And he said, okay, same check the boxes. It's 4 stories. It's awful.
It's flat.
And I don't think we're getting any news on it, which is what
I thought we were. Yeah, I thought we were getting 20 minutes.
Well, when they were talking about one was president last time.
For you?
Next conference.
I was thinking, hi, good to see you again.
All right,
I just emailed it to you.
What?
are you guys seeing staff reports?
We didn't get the
On what?
spreadsheet for.
No, we're not in legislation.
Well, we were getting this one, we get in a green,
We're talking about Greenway.
greenway, yeah.
But we just never go back. Alright. So we'll see what Jack needs to do.
And then we don't have.
That was supposed to be.
Did you hear that?
Now, she usually comes when the agenda goes out. She sends the plans.
Was she simply noted?
No, because she does it, I've never remembered her, she comes once she sees them.
Oh, wow, now we better
So maybe she send it to someone else.
Can you,
You want me to call?
send her note?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll just get started. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order Environmental Matters Committee meeting for February 19th, 2020. For the record, all the members are present. First up, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I would like to add to the agenda a brief period at the end to discuss the bag legislation.
Okay, we'll add that to, I'll second, or do you want to second that?
I'll second that,
What legislation?
the plastic
We're not,
ban.
yeah, I think we need to be careful not to talk about too many specifics, but I think we can still talk
Yeah.
about the general
All right.
questions about it.
So
So I made that motion.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move approval of the minutes.
As amended?
Amended? Is
second.
there an amendment?
I mean, as, whatever, revised. Second. Oh, minutes, sorry. Okay, so we're okay with the revised agenda? We didn't need to do a second?
So then you, right.
Yeah.
When you were doing.
Yeah.
You had to,
So we've amended the agenda.
Yeah,
You have a
right.
motion to approve the amended
Right.
agenda.
Oh, okay, I made that motion.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the amended agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. All right.
Now on to
Um,
minutes.
Minutes?
I made a motion to approve the minutes.
I second that motion.
All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Appointments. Is Mr. Shapiro here, or anybody who could speak on his behalf? Appears to be a new appointment.
Is that why Archie's?
No, he's for Greenway discussion.
Oh, okay.
I'd be inclined to kind of wait on this until we can hear from Hillary or Mr. Shapiro, although he does appear to be incredibly well qualified
Yeah,
to do this.
incredibly so.
What are the thoughts of the committee?
The reason that we have this is so we can see the candidate face to face, usually to thank them profusely for volunteering.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good policy to adhere to. So I know Hillary's on leave, so she's not here. And I don't know whether he was invited to be here or not. I think he looks like an extraordinarily strong candidate. So on paper, I would be overwhelmingly in support. But I think you're right, Mr. Chair. We have this new process, and I don't know that there's any urgency to fill this space.
Questioning one of his references.
Yeah, I do too. I was going to make that point here. Yes, that first one would cause doubt on my part, but the others
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, even if Fred was here, the flip side of that is we don't want the public to think that we rubber stamp these appointments.
Right.
Okay, so
So I'll move we postpone approval until we have the applicant or someone representing the applicant here before us.
I second.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Green, can you, for the next meeting, reach out to Hillary and/or the applicant to see if they can.
Don't reach out to the applicants, that would be
Hillary. Okay.
Right.
Hillary.
Okay. All right. And our next up, we have a discussion about the Greenway. So I'd like to invite Director Trader and Director Guild and Mr. Giblin from the Environmental Commission. I'd like to come on up to the table if you have to talk about the Greenway. I was hoping.
Sean with no mapping.
Yeah, I thought Sean didn't Sean get invited too?
Sean.
Yeah, I'd put her and Sally on the invite list. Well, on second thought, let's hold off on this because I'm hoping that Director Nash and Sean Wampler, who's really going to be key, will be able to come. So if you want to, so anyway, I think if we could proceed, jump ahead and go with update from the Office of Environmental Policy.
Can I
Yes.
interject? I really have a problem when we have an item on the agenda and there's no attachment that we can look at in advance. I would have liked to have seen the Greenway plan or something from Sean Wampler showing the Greenway. We had a difficulty like this morning at the Finance Committee where we had a resolution in front of us to dramatically increase a pay level and virtually no documentation. We voted to postpone the discussion of that. It was moving from an A10 to an A13. I think there's probably a good argument behind that, but we had none of it. We had essentially a 2-sentence report from the Civil Service Commission, which gave us no information. We had no background information, and we can't do our job. Each of these committees is charged with taking the deep dive into various components so that we can espouse to our colleagues on the council, we've done that dive, you can trust us. And we're not getting the materials to do it. So quite frankly, my inclination henceforth is if there isn't an attachment that we can review ahead of time, I'm inclined to amend the agenda to take it off until such time as we get it.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be helpful if we had some staff, some legislative aides to help in that regard, because for this, in this case, I think we all wanted to, at some point, have expressed interest in talking about Greenway. I think we may have an old plan from 2004, maybe 2002. I couldn't find it, but it would be good to get almost like a write-up from staff about that we could as a. But, Alderwoman,
Mike, I just want to make sure that, because you were in attendance as well at the last Annapolis Environmental Commission meeting where the subject of Greenway came up, And I think I was sort of the impetus in how come we can't get a greenway plan? And Dr. Nash was at that meeting, and I think she misunderstood the question. She was thinking about a greenway plan like the Anne Arundel County has that. Remember, they have that book. It makes us look, I mean, and that makes us look really bad, you know. So they have that. So she was confused, and I said, no, just like let that be a guide. At least should be part of the comprehensive plan to see how much green space we have, whatever we do with it, or however we dissected it. Basically, that's your first check on what we can't develop, you know, or look at differently. And then we realized we didn't have one. I went over to Sean and looked to see what she had, and she had Parks and Rec. She had that, but she didn't have a master greenway plan. And she hadn't been directed to have, and I said to her, wow, it'd be really cool to have you present what you do have, and then I talked to you, and that's what happened. So I don't know where it kind of, so it would have been a matter of having Sean here, Sally here, and the goal was to actually have sort of like a PowerPoint of what she has.
Right.
And what she's, you know, directed to have.
But this is germane, I think, was brought up at last night's presentation for form-based zoning, where greenways and green areas were very prominent in the plans that other municipalities developed. And we may have the nexus of that. We may already have as much as we can possibly have, or we may not. But I thought that was the whole purpose of having this as a topic of discussion before this committee, and we have nothing.
And Sean is, I think, very happy to do that.
Yeah.
And her capabilities are infinite on what she can map. But was I correct in what sort of transpired at that AAC meeting? Jackie was there as well, right? And there's a lot of frustrations. I think Diane Butler was there too. And she's like, well, doesn't anyone understand?
Well, the clock is ticking with the comp plan right around the
Exactly.
corner.
Huh?
Yeah, but we do have Mr. Trader here. Perhaps he can.
Well, so does, I realize that we don't have Ms. Wampler or Dr. Nash here, which are both going to be crucial to this effort. And this is something that's been talked about for many years, the development of a greenway plan for the city. So I want to know if any of you have information about some of the past efforts. I know, I believe there's one back in 2002, it may not have ever been adopted by the council. I don't know if any of you have information on that or what the latest effort is, because I know the council has expressed our desire over a year ago, I think, to have this be a part of this upcoming comp plan. And also, we don't have somebody from the Conservancy Board, so we may need to end up tabling a lot of this discussion. But regardless, I'll let anybody have any updates, information on this.
I don't personally have one.
Okay.
I haven't seen a Greenway proposal
Okay.
in its entirety, but I do know that the Recreation Department will be instrumental into whatever proposal or initiatives that the mayor takes.
Has Miss Whitlinger been, Marissa Whitlinger, has she, I know she runs the Greenway program, I mean the Greenscape program. Has she been, do you know if she's been involved with the Greenway?
Ms. Whitlinger?
Yes.
Yes. She and I have not had any discussions about it.
Okay.
I don't know what she has done as of late. You mentioned some 2002 documentation. Obviously, I wasn't around at that time.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess if you could find out any information next time we speak, I think it'd be helpful to know as the committee determines how we want to move forward with this. Did either one of you wanted to say anything else?
Yes, Michael Giblin for the Annapolis Environmental Commission. We've been talking about this the last couple of months. In December, I attended the Director of Planning had a meeting of chairs of boards and commissions, and she tasked us to develop goals, strategies, and performance measures that we thought should be in the comprehensive plan. Bringing that message back to the AEC at the January meeting, we developed the idea that we would include as in one of our goals that the comprehensive plan include a greenway plan and a map, and that we would work in concert with the Conservancy Board to try to identify those properties that have the potential to become part of a greenway network throughout the city. And so tomorrow evening, a second meeting of the boards and commission chairs is meeting with Dr. Nash. And what I'll be presenting then are the first cut of the AEC's goals and strategy statement. So we're really strong in favor of a greenway plan and map within the comprehensive plan document.
Mm-hmm. So was Ms. Wampler at your meeting?
No.
Okay.
Who was there? There was, the chair couldn't attend. And there was, the Conservancy Board couldn't attend. They sent a representative, and I don't recall her name. But we've made that contact with the Conservancy Board to try and work together on this.
So the Conservancy Board also wants to have a little bit more direction about, you know, how they approach properties to try to put into conservation and to acquire and put conservation easements on. So the mayor came to one of their meetings, I think in August or last fall, and talked about his WE plan. So the WE and the Greenway can cover some of the same territory.
The what program?
The west-east interconnector,
right.
the mayor's plan. So he was very interested in the Conservancy Board's work because they are looking at properties to give priority to, and he has this plan for a WE, and it would make a lot of sense. And then there's this idea of a greenway as well. So all of this needs to work together. And then the Environmental Commission wants to identify properties which they think are important to conserve. So that's their work with the Conservancy Board. And then they put those properties into the comprehensive plans. We're identifying properties that we think are important to conserve, especially those that can be connected, whether it's by a very small piece of property, whether it's by a park like Truxton Park, to make a greenway around the city for biking, walking, you know, strollers, whatever. And it may also go into areas that are shared by vehicles as well in some places. So the idea was to not just have a plan, but we were bringing Sean Wampler in to see if we can develop actually a map that would go into the comprehensive plan. But nothing is real. There's nothing I don't think that Sean has to show you yet.
Okay.
I don't think she would have a map yet that shows all of these properties.
I don't think she should have a map yet.
Alderman Arnett and Dr. Nash.
And can we also ask,
come on up, please.
Can we ask Mr. Braithwaite to come up to the table too? Because I have a very strong process question here. The council makes policy. The council has not approved a WE plan. It hasn't even been presented to us. It seems to me that the process should start with some notion of policy that we should have a greenway plan or any of these other plans before we send staff off, before we involve people. And I think this is how things continually get bollocksed up. We have people running off, and the last people to be consulted, and in fact, I think the very reason why we wanted to have this discussion is find out what the heck is going on. But it seems to me it should start with a policy initiative from the council to the staff with parameters, direction, resources, potentially budget to do these things so we don't get to the point we are here now. A WE plan? I loved your question, Alderwoman Tierney. What is that? What's the WE plan? I mean, I knew what it was, but that's not an official city plan. There's no sanctioning of that by the policymakers. Yeah. I've heard it. I've heard the mayor present it, but we can't just assume that that's the policy of the council.
Alderwoman?
My pet peeve is spending money, taxpayer money, on studies, and they go by the wayside. And I'll ask this question, and I hope the answer is yes, because then I will overreact. Is this WE plan in coordination with our comprehensive bike plan?
Yes,
It is.
Basically follows the recommendation of the master bicycle plan that was adopted in 2011 or 2013, something like that.
Right.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. So it's coordinated with a plan that we've done.
But it's not the same as the bicycle plan. It's an adjunct to it.
It's an adjunct, not quite.
And I agree that we also need to have the Conservancy Board, because they could be some of the people that could acquire some of these lands to be set aside and be incorporated into a Greenway plan. I'm not opposed to a Greenway plan at all. In fact, I'm very much in favor of it. But I think we have some significant process issues here that are not being followed, that drag these things out, make them needlessly complicated, and I don't think we're doing it the correct way. If we want to have a Greenway plan, let's initially present some sort of resolution that we have a Greenway plan that does the whereases, the purpose, and gets the council vote to say, yes, this is policy of the city, we want to do it. Not just run off in all kinds of directions doing things, and then we sort of find out that it really is in disarray, as it appears to me.
What was this, Dr. Nash, was this, I'm trying to remember, was there a Greenway mentioned in the 2008 comp plan?
2009.
I don't think so, but I know the Conservancy Board has been working on the idea for a long time. So, not full steam ahead or anything, but when they've had opportunities and available staff time from our IT department.
So
well, I think I do think that your comments have a lot of merit, Alderman. I think it would help to provide some clarity to staff in terms of what the council is looking for. At this point, it's a little tricky because we have the new comp plan being developed, and I think we could get maybe we just need to get a resolution out there in the process quickly.
I think that's what we need, is a resolution. Find out what it is, and we is not east-west, it's west-east. So, I mean, let's even get it in the right compass points. But I'm not arguing at all that I don't think these are good ideas, but I do think that there's a regular, regimented process that allows these things to operate appropriately. It's taking staff resources. I know Sean Wampler is very much in demand. I have a whole bunch of things I'd like to get from her as well. And she works for IT. She's not even represented by any of the directors here.
Yeah.
So I really would argue that we need to get these processes started in the right way. I don't think there will be any animosity towards it, and I do think that it would be appropriate to get some of these things into the budget discussion. It is taking staff time. It may need contract resources, may need money to procure properties to put into the Conservancy, all of those things. But I don't think we're doing it the right way. I think
I think you're right. I'm going to turn the floor to Alderwoman, but I do want to say I think this is something that potentially could be doable in-house between Sean and the Conservancy Board, but you're right. Maybe we need to give some more funds, to example, for the Conservancy Board if we're going to be expecting more from them in terms of expenses. But I guess before I turn it over, a question about, is this, Dr. Nash, is this being worked on currently? The Greenway, is that a concept
we can incorporate it into our work scope for the comprehensive plan. I haven't yet because it was sort of, I knew the Conservancy Board was working on it, but until the last meeting of the Environmental Commission, I didn't realize it was something that there was interest in having it be in the comprehensive plan itself.
All right, Alderwoman.
So, yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and the impression that I'm getting very clearly is that this is not an integral part of the comprehensive plan, or you don't believe that it's an integral part of the comprehensive plan. Greenway plan doesn't work for you.
Well, I just wasn't sure. At the Environmental Commission meeting, I wasn't sure what they meant, because over the years we've talked about different kind of Greenway plans, green infrastructure plans, different ideas. So I was confusing it
Right.
with, I think, a green
But
infrastructure
it has to
plan.
work for you. Why, we don't want to do something and force it down your throat.
Right.
So
No,
I'm asking
I
you
think
for it. What
it
you
will be fine to incorporate, like, similar to, do you remember Alderman Savage's amendments to the Forest Drive East Port Sector Study, where he said, why don't we have, it wasn't called greenways, but it was something similar, be one of the community character types. And then you can designate those on the maps, just like you designate the other places, like you were saying, Alderman Arnett, with form-based codes. So I think that would tie very nicely into our idea of looking at place types and then, making sure we incorporate from the get-go where green spaces would go and where they already are, and we can connect them.
I just wanted to add that I agree that some sort of direction from City Council on whether you wish to have a greenway and have boards and commissions work on that will provide some nice direction to the boards and commissions so that they can, add they're there to do that sort of work, and it would give them focus and work, make them work together. But also keep in mind that the Environmental Commission is an advisory commission to the mayor and to the City Council. So them making their recommendation that there be a greenway and that it be included on the comprehensive plan is actually an appropriate part of the process.
And then we go from there to a resolution.
And I think the commissions would be entirely happy and excited to help out the council.
Yeah.
They
And
would realize that's why they're there.
Council would be happy too, but I think Director Trader
yeah.
is correct. This is going to fall to him, and he needs to be telling us what kind of resources
I think it's going to be many different departments.
Well, I mean,
it's
to
gonna
maintain.
Well, I think it's going to be P&Z and Rec and Parks. Go ahead, Director Trader.
If I could add, and I concur with Alderman Arnett in terms of the proper direction in the development of a particular initiative. Please, and I will repeat, please, to add to that, please add the Recreation Department from the onset of any related parks, recreational, leisure initiatives that the city has. Because too often, the department is notified halfway through, at the end. And then it all comes back to us in a very big way.
Yeah.
Keep us in front of this. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think, like I was saying, I do think it's going to be both of your departments, planning, zoning, and rec and parks, not to mention Office of Environmental Policy, whatever iteration that happens in the future.
Is that your new name?
I'm saying whatever iteration it is, form it is in the future. But but anyway, I think we'll just have to look at this as kind of the beginning of a conversation, but we don't have too much time in light of the comp plan. What's the target for the first draft of the comp plan?
Fall.
Yeah.
Could we?
At which time this message will be updated.
Well, so if perchance we could get something even done in-house with a commission, the help of a board, I think the time for that could potentially be pretty quick for turnaround. But I'm just wondering, because ideally I think we could either get something in the comp plan or at least reference in the comp, like a placeholder in the comp plan, because that would then influence our, the planning and zoning, the reviews for development projects, and obviously Rec and Park in terms of how those properties are used in the future and what capacity, because they may not always be public. They could always remain private conservation easements, although I think it'd be beneficial to have them be public in some fashion. But anyway, Director Gobb, did you have your hands up too?
Well, yeah, I just have to reiterate, I'm just kind of discouraged that a master greenway plan is not a tool used in our comprehensive planning of the city of Annapolis. And if it isn't, then let's not do overkill and not use it as a tool. I mean, I respect what the AEC is saying, but if it's not, bought in by planning and zoning, then it's going to be an ineffective tool. What was really great last night was when we saw that matrix, and this responds to Director Trader's comment, that when a development comes in, there was this whole master responsibility list. Every department was represented, and so one of those would be environmental, and that tool would be a greenway plan of some sort. So I just feel like I'm pulling teeth here, and I'm looking at Michael to see if he agrees with me being on the Annapolis
No,
Environmental
I
Commission.
don't think you should feel that way. I think we would be happy to have such an instrument.
But would it be a tool for you? I mean,
Yes, for future development,
Well,
of course.
Okay.
Staff's already
Okay.
used, in the
Okay.
past, they've used the county's greenway plan, and because we don't have our own, and there is some overlap with the counties because we've annexed property that used to be county and was for example, Crystal Spring was identified as
So how do we make
greenway in the
it,
county.
so we only have till fall, how do we make it happen?
Well, I think we'll get that, I'll make a note, we have to get that resolution introduced. I'll request something along those lines.
So the
I have
genesis.
consultants as well that I think they can incorporate
Right.
this without it being a major additional change to their scope, because they're already doing a lot of mapping.
Right.
Would they be able to work with our conservancy board and?
Yes, I can arrange that.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a great suggestion, thank you.
Yeah, we've
So-
just been talking about it for so long.
Yeah.
It's a touchy
So would it
subject.
help you then for us to get a resolution?
Of course,
Clearly
just so I know
expressing our
exactly what you have in
direction.
mind and.
And so we know what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at the
So I think that we
Yeah.
fell into this most recently very honestly. I think that the mayor saw an opportunity with Poplar Trails, and he also had some ideas from his campaign, which I very much support. But again, I keep coming back to this, and I think one of the things that Teresa Sutherland started doing for us in the city was to have processes where we follow an order and we get to a place. I think in my discussions recently with City Attorney Lyle, he's also talking about processes. He's looking at the way we're doing things and saying, gee, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't want to try to reinvent city code on the backs of the comp plan. It has enough encumbrances. But this one, I think, it struck me last night at the presentation on form-based zoning, how many green spaces were outlined in all of those things. And well, of course, that's what you would want to do. That's what makes a human place. And I think we actually do have a lot of that in mind already. And we have some things where we should identify it as, if this ever becomes available, if we ever have enough money to buy it, this should be part of our green plan. And I like the mayor's idea of having all the trails connected. That was part of the bicycle plan. That was actually part of the master sidewalk plan too, the primary, secondary, and tertiary sidewalk plans. And they all should be integrated. And that's all comprehensive planning. So, yeah, I think that we need to ask law to quickly draft a resolution, and then we need to come back to this as an agenda item to make sure it doesn't die on the vine. It's so good, so necessary, but we need to do it right.
Yeah, agree. Okay, so I will be sending you more information for law office, requested law office for the resolution. We'll get
And
that
don't stop
rolling.
working.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. Well, thank you all for your time. We don't have too much else to discuss about this at the moment, I guess.
Okay.
So we'll just have to wait and see. We'll work on the resolution. I'll try to reach out to the Conservancy Board, see if they have any additional information. Anything else from the committee
Where
on
did
this
she
topic?
get direction from? IT?
Yeah. I mean, but she's always good with helping other departments and
Yes,
with their
complicated.
needs.
Yeah.
And she may already have a lot of the information done for identifying
Yeah.
our canopy. All right. So thanks again, and thank you, Director Trader. I know this is very short notice on your end, and I apologize for the short notice. But we will definitely include you in future discussions about this and give you advance notice. All right. And I guess we could jump into what's next here. Plan and zoning.
Yeah, Jack, Takia emailed it to us.
And while you're getting ready, I will say that after Dr. Nash, after the presentation last night, I am warming up to the idea of form-based zoning, and I think, or form-based code, and I do think, I think we have a potential to kind of combine or insert into that a lot of this green infrastructure, kind of greenway, those kind of ideas into the form-based zoning and figuring out how that can really not just further the experience for the pedestrians, but tie that into some of our other goals. It sounds like there's a lot of potential there.
I've been sort of on the fence about the idea for a long time, but last night I was like, oh, this could work.
So I want to thank you for the presentation, and I do admit that it softened my heart a little bit towards it. But I was impressed that the incredible level of effort, both in terms of the number of people, all the stakeholders, the length of time, and the thoroughness. And my big takeaway was, before we move into a form-based zoning plan, and I like the idea of maybe doing a particular area, we have an enormous investment that we would have to make before we get there. And my skepticism is pretty much the same as I have with planned development, is that unless we really have a rigorous and totally bought into plan, I think a lot of things can go awry. And I also think if we're going to do this, you need about 10 more staff. Seriously, I mean, that's a huge change in our culture and our way of doing things. And you know the number of people that are going to come out of the woodwork. I mean, if you think you're not having fun now, just wait till we get into that. It's even going to be bigger than ancillary dwelling units, I think, in terms of change in mindset. So while I'm more supportive, I certainly am very cautious.
Right. If we decide to pursue it, it's still a ways away.
I think it's for the 2030 plan.
Maybe so. I don't really have very many updates for you. There's mostly just some revisions. 285 West is under construction. You probably knew that if you've driven down West Street.
Can we talk about that?
Sure.
Which one?
The one that we were talking about. That is such a monolithic facade. I mean, I was looking at it, ironically enough, out of Alan Hyatt's conference room and with John Arison, and we were all commenting, and this is Mr. Development, Alan Hyatt. My God, that is big and unarticulated, and maybe there's going to be some icing on the cake when it finally gets done, but holy cow. Was there ever any discussion on the plans for that, about bays and any other variations of materials? Or
I know that it was in the review process for 2 years and that they did a lot of community outreach. It was before Alderman Tierney was in office, and there a lot of input. I don't know the details of how the facade was planned and whether more articulations were considered, but I tend to agree, although I think it will look better when it's finished.
I hope so.
So we'll see.
I hope so.
May I have, so why didn't that go, well, you understand, everybody reacts when it's physically built. And my first question is when we do outreach, do we show them a rendering? Do they, okay, so they see the height. Okay. So this did not go to the Planning Commission because it was before the legislation, or I know it did, and I was just curious on why.
That's right. It was before the new legislation for requiring major site designs to go to Planning Commission.
And it doesn't have any MPDUs, which is really unfortunate. It just is fee in lieu of. Yeah, it's, I mean, I'm not an architect, but the massing is just so disappointing when you drive into, I mean, that building is now the gateway into the city of Annapolis from West Street. Then I'm getting, as you know, I'm getting a lot of comments on it because a lot of people drive by it. So it's just really unfortunate, and hopefully the facade will warm it up a little bit. And
I think it will be a lot better when when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night, form-based zoning, and I thought, well, we're a little bit late on that one. So, thanks.
Any other updates you'd like to point out? Are all the updates the red, basically the changes from last month?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't look like much has changed.
No. Lofts at Eastport was remanded, although now there is a motion to reconsider, so the remand is on hold. Rocky Gorge, their grading permits have
What's that mean?
expired, and that's pretty much it.
What does that mean? What is that? It was remanded, and who's
So the Board of
motioning?
Appeals remanded
Right.
5 of the 9 adequate public facilities
Right.
criteria back to the department, but then the applicant filed a motion to reconsider, and that will go March 3rd to the Board of Appeals.
I have one question. As I was going to ask about Chesapeake Grove, it doesn't look like there's any kind of update, but it just got me thinking about, I've mentioned to you before about some of the traffic concerns that my constituents have brought up, just the collective impacts from that and the Bay Village proposed project, assuming they even get approval, and then the Lidl, which is county, but there's definitely some concern on that intersection, because I know one of the movements at the intersection of Edgewood and Bay Ridge is still rated
Right.
E, I think, I think it has the E rating on one of them.
For one of the approaches or the
yeah.
intersections?
It was northbound. So, right on
we
Bay
are
Ridge.
asking Chesapeake Grove to do another traffic impact study, since it has been 10 years? I'm not sure when the last, no, they did an update, but in any case, it's been a long time since they did their original traffic impact study. And so we'll make sure to include those other developments in the future projections of traffic, and as well as just a blanket background growth factor.
Yeah.
So we'll see how those intersections turn out.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I just, again, coming out of last night's presentation, I kind of like the idea of the road diet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which roads
We didn't know what that was.
Forest Drive, we're going to make it single lane.
Hey,
We
well, I don't know
tried
which
to do
roads.
that on West Street with Steve Carr, and State Highway laughed at us because it does reduce
That's the
capacity.
challenge.
But that
But it
was
has other
another good thing that
benefits.
came out of last
But what if you
night's-
include alternate transit with that? I mean,
Yeah.
because that's Forest Drive,
Yeah.
Bay Ridge especially, is a good potential because you have the park and ride off in Riva, and if you could turn part of the giant parking lot into a multimodal transit, you have a really good potential there. But Alderman.
So another good point that was made last night I'm sorry, I can't remember the presenter's name.
Jason Beskey.
Pesky, was that unlike some of the other places that he's worked with, although maybe they did, we are dealing with 3 different jurisdictions, and that really complicates things. I think one of the things I think very good that's coming out of the Forest Drive Eastport Sector Study Task Force is we now are having, I think, very productive. I know that there was coordination going on all along, and part of it was just letting us know the extent of that. But I think there's a stronger recognition that we have to be linked in with these other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
We can't do the plan in a vacuum, and particularly when it has to do with our thoroughfares. So, but we, I think, maybe are complicated by the multiple jurisdictions and the peninsulas, and the fact that unlike in strong towns, we are a very old city. We were developed. We were not part of the post-World War II sprawl. And so we have some very strong constraints, and I think positive ones. So I'm not sure we fit that mold of strong towns, and I'm re-reviewing the video of that. And I've almost finished reading the book, and I want to sit down with Stephen Rice after I'm done and talk about that. And I'm also the Death and Life of Cities or whatever, bought that. But
Where do you find all the time to read all?
Well,
It's a long one.
Between that and answering emails from a certain person, I don't have much time.
Yeah, I think one other idea is has the city ever looked at approaching the county for like a joint traffic study? Because I'm just thinking in terms of if we were to even, it doesn't have to be Forest Drive, whatever road, if we were to look at a road and try to plan for, okay, a road diet or including some kind of bike lane, anything like that, presumably we'd have to have some kind of plan ahead of time, but also counts and some idea of where are people going and what percentage of the people who live down on the neck are actually, when they're maybe during rush hour or during weekend, how many of them are leaving the peninsula entirely, or they're just driving downtown or to Parole or to the park and ride, where? And that would kind of determine what kind of infrastructure we'd have to include, be it a bus jitney or something, or I don't know.
I like that steam locomotive in the picture on the
What about
beginning.
I love that old picture.
Remember
Yeah.
the gondola?
And also the horses, and did you see all the horse manure on the road?
I know that Anne Arundel County Department of Public Works has committed to doing counts of Forest Drive periodically every 3 years, which will be great to have that data. I haven't heard of an origin destination study for Forest Drive. That's something we could explore, but would be more expensive. But although now they have ways of capturing the data with Bluetooth, so it's not as expensive as it used to be.
Oh, yeah, and maybe the county would help pay for some of that since it's...
Right. They've been very willing to work with us.
Yeah.
I don't know if... I think a road diet would be tricky just because it would decrease level of service and for vehicles.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to make sure everyone was on board with the policy idea that it's okay to reduce level of service for vehicles if we're increasing level of service for bikes and people.
Right.
Is public transportation involved? Like, is that sort of like the skinny street concept? Is road diet the same as skinny streets? I don't know.
Well, it's similar. It is reducing the the width of lanes, which does create safer travel environments because cars are going slower.
Right.
But if your goal is to move cars through your street as fast as possible, you don't want cars to be going slower. So that's why you have to agree on the policy before you figure out what to do.
And probably a good public transportation network is secondary.
The county did just do, their Office of Transportation did their Move Arundel study, and they did look at Forest Drive as far as transit and other things like that. I don't think they had origin and destination information, but there are some tidbits of information in there that could help us. And I think some parts of the county would be very interested in more multimodal design. It's just making sure everyone agrees.
Two quickies. Actually, I think maybe we do want traffic to go slower. In fact, that's what Alderwoman Finlayson said to me. She'd like to reduce the speed on Forest Drive to 25, maybe 30, 25 miles an hour. One of the possible benefits of that is making it more likely that people will seek alternate modes of transit. But on that topic, I was intrigued in a meeting we had now a couple of weeks ago at least, where you were talking about this traffic reliability study. In all your spare time, have you been able to advance your thinking on that? Because I want to talk about that before we come out with the revisions to OWN 1919.
Right.
That sounded very fruitful to me, and maybe you could give a brief...
So I discussed that with our regional MPO, the BMC. Does everyone know what that is? Okay, they're working on a study of all of the jurisdictions' traffic impact studies, and they're looking for best practices. And we've had one interview with them where they asked us about how we do our traffic impact studies and what we would like to do. And so I said, I'd like to look at travel time reliability. If that's a standard that could be measured reliably, I think it would be a lot more useful and helpful than level of service. And so they said that they were going to include that in their study.
Good.
So they'll have results in a couple more months, but they're looking nationwide at best practices and regionally at what people do.
So from a practical perspective, and I've been working with City Attorney Lyle and Joel on 01919, should we hold off? I mean, is that something, because we're doing major reformatting of that with suggestions that Teresa Sutherland made with your help. But it's still got the old A through E or F through F in there, which is causing a lot of consternation. Is that study near term enough that we should delay the legislation or withdraw it even and start over?
You could. I mean, that legislation is important because it makes that section of Title 22 like the other sections of Title 22, and it's very deficient right now, the way it is. So
Yes, it
in
is.
some ways, it'd be good just because it's better than what we have.
Right.
But it might not be worth the work effort if we're going to then revise the standards themselves. But at least the structure would be there if we did go ahead with it.
Yeah.
But I know also Mike Lyles is looking at putting more things in regulations and less specifics in the code. So maybe this could be a guinea pig where we make it more general and then refer to regulations that we then update. But that's just an idea.
And that's something that we broached that. I am intrigued by it, but I think that's something we need to bring to the Rules Committee to discuss, because that's a major change. As I say, I'm intrigued by it. I'm also intimidated by the level of effort.
Agreed.
And I really need to know the difference between it. We talked about this before this started. Being in code, being in regulation, is that just creating a different set of volumes, like the federal volumes, but have the same process where it's done by ordinance? In which case, I'm not sure I see the efficiency, but I think we need to discuss it. Certainly, there's a lot of things I think we need to fix. I think Titles 17, 20, and 22 ought to be put under the purview of the Planning Commission for review, not just Title 21, since they're so interrelated. And then they all are full of things that could be regulations. So this might be a 2030 comp plan issue too.
It's getting to be a long plan, the 2030 plan.
Anyway.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you for the digression.
You're welcome. Anything
One,
else
well,
for Dr.
sort of
Nash?
ties into this is transportation and traffic studies, et cetera. And they're done by the developer, right? The developer hires, or how does
No.
that, what's the latest on that? I haven't-
The city hires a consultant.
Did that change? Did that change?
It's been like that
Okay,
for
so it's
10 years or
misnomer that
so.
the developer I think people misunderstand
Right.
that.
The developer pays, but they just write us a check. We then hire the consultant, and they're not supposed to have communication with the consultants.
Okay. And I think there's still
Unless
a
we're there.
vacancy on the transportation, traffic engineer position that should be part of this review as well. But
Is that position would be in plan and zoning or public works?
I'm sorry,
the traffic
engineer.
position?
yeah, last budget,
Oh,
we
it's
added,
in public works. They just haven't been able to fill it.
yeah, it's been hard.
Okay.
I know. I've been egerly awaiting the filling of that.
They're going to be throwing a lot of work on that.
Lisa will be jumping for joy.
Anything else, Dr. Nash? Okay. All right. Well, thank you
Okay,
for
thank
your
you.
time.
Thanks for your patience on the Greenway plan.
Yeah.
You'll be hearing it in your sleep.
And all right. So we'll move on. Update from Office of Environmental Policy.
Jackie Guile, Director of Office of Environmental Policy. So big on my list of things I'm turning to, my next projects is Earth Day 50, which is April 22nd. It'll be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So I'm working with Mitchell Stevenson on events for both Earth Day and throughout the month. One thing we are doing is having Earth Month, designating April as Earth Month, and every week we are going to focus on habitat, 1 week, air, water, and land. And we will make suggestions via social media on things you can do for that media. And we'll start out the month on April 1st with 50 things you can do for the environment, and then every week focus on one of air, water, land, and habitat. I know that the city took up the resolution that my office put together for World Migratory Bird Day to designate it also as April 22nd. This is an initiative that we were approached about by the Maryland Bird Conservation Partnership, which is a fairly new organization promoting bird protection and bird habitat protection practices among counties and cities in Maryland, and providing information that we can use for public education. So we have an integrated environment between animals, birds, and humans, and how we interact and affect one another. So we went ahead and submitted our application, and part of that application is to have a resolution passed designating a World Migratory Bird Day and have an event concerning birds on that day. And I apologize, that was not here when that was introduced. I did not see it added to the revised agenda for the last city council
I don't
meeting.
think any of us knew it was going to be.
Yeah. So otherwise I would have been here. We could have answered the questions. I know there were questions, but I will be here on Monday to address those questions so we can get that resolution passed.
It's on the agenda, but I forget where on
I
Monday
think it's on
night.
consent for the moment, but
Okay.
somebody may take
If there
it out.
are questions.
There were questions about cost.
Right. So the only cost is $125 for the application, which OEP was taking out of its general fund. And then each year that we renew, it's $125. Again, I would take that out of our general fund.
Right, so there's no-
But because Bird City, the Maryland Bird Conservation Partnership wanted to make the award to the city on the 19th because Green Drinks is having an event tonight at, their Green Drinks is between 5:30 and 7:30, but the award to the city will be about 6:15 tonight. They wanted to do it as part of that because the theme is the birds and the bees. And there's another event that the Conservation Partnership is attending at Quiet Waters Park, a birding type of event. So we will receive the plaque tonight. There can be another event before City Council when the mayor could receive it directly. They have made us banners that we can hang from the street lights that say Annapolis Bird City. La Plato is the first bird city, but Annapolis is the first city in Maryland to achieve the high flyer status, which is the highest level. We had to get 20 points to achieve that designation, and we earned 31 points. So we went well above and beyond. So things that we're already doing for our pollinator gardens and other sustainable Maryland initiatives are counted towards the bird city designation as well. So they also will have signs that say we're a bird city, and the plan is to hang the banners on Earth Day. On this, we have 10 that we're getting.
Good. And it looks like the mayor can't attend tonight.
No, he can't attend
I'll try.
tonight.
I should be able to make it.
Okay, great.
5:30, it's early, 5:30.
It's so the award will
award's
probably
at 6.
be around 6:15.
And where is it again?
It's at the Graduate Hotel on
Okay,
West
yeah.
Street, former Lowe's Hotel. And it's part of the Green Drinks event. So if any of you can be there to accept on behalf of the mayor, that would be fantastic. Racine and I will be there as well. And Racine did the work for the application, and she went above and beyond. She did a fantastic job. So pesticides, integrated pest management policy, we are updating that in conjunction with the Maryland Pesticide Network. They're giving us a lot of their sweat equity to update our pest management policy. So I'll be working on that in the next month as well. And also, we had the plastics campaign, reduction campaign last August and September. And now I'll be working on getting rid of all the plastic in the city, used by city in the city buildings, so that we won't see plastic bottles on tables at meetings, or there's areas where it's kind of prevalent throughout the
There's
city.
a bunch of them in the conference room.
I know.
They're teasing us with those.
I know. And,
We have to get rid
right.
of those.
The cups, the disposable cups next to the water coolers are recyclable, but not all of them are cornstarch. So we would need to get rid of the plastic throughout Annapolis in the city, because we need to set the example for the residents. Then also, I have been following closely and working there's a large group that does a Friday call on the state legislation to ban plastic bags, and I attended the House hearing last week to learn all the arguments for and the arguments against, and I've been participating in those calls. They're largely led through Maryland League of Conservation Voters and Sierra Club, their chapter, the Minneapolis chapter, and Trash Free Maryland, and there's a wide group of participants on those calls. So I can answer any questions about that as well. And we are still working with BG&E on installing electric car chargers. The next set we're working with to get into the Weston. The Weston is very interested in having them there, so there will be a DC fast charge and 2 level 2 chargers, likely to go in the next couple of months. Then we're putting them in Gott's Garage and 1 DC fast charger at the Visitor Center. We're looking at another location in West Annapolis, trying to find a street location. And another one that we're working towards with BG&E is to we couldn't find a good spot in Eastport. There's just not a lot of spaces to put it, definitely not on city-owned, operator, or leased properties. So we were approached by the owner of Bay Ridge Liquor Store, and he very much wanted to, he had talked to the other tenants there and wanted to get charging station put in their parking lot. And I had a meeting with him and the landlord for that shopping center, and Annapolis Green came and BG&E. And as long as there is a leased area, the spots in the area that's needed for the electrical outlets, et cetera, infrastructure that is leased to the city, even for $1, they can take advantage, Bay Ridge Shopping Center can take advantage of the BG&E free program, free installation, free maintenance program for the electric chargers. And so the end of that meeting was that the landlord explored that, was actually a representative from the landlord's company, and they are interested in looking into that further. So I have to do the next step, which would be the contract for that, and then it'd have to be worked out through our legal department.
And what if, is it an option to get a perpetual easement from a landlord, property owner easement?
I don't know if that'll be as attractive
new...
as just doing a nominal lease, because then they have the power then to end it if it's not working out for them. But BG&E did make it clear that they're looking for at least a 5-year commitment. If they go ahead and do through the expense of installing the electric chargers, they would like them to be there for at least 5 years.
It might be something, I don't know if any other jurisdiction has done it, but just to have the electric vehicle easement, if that would help us expand that infrastructure, if we don't have the space to actually purchase or own the land. Mm-hmm. But whatever works, if they agree to the lease, that'd be good as well.
Yeah, this seems to be the quickest way to get this to happen over there.
Oh, this is really picky, but it's a tricky intersection. How it depends, especially if you're going one certain way. You gotta. Where would it be on that?
So
land?
it would be closer to the BB&T bank.
Okay, yeah.
Which is right on the corner, but kind of not next to an opening, to a driveway to access the parking lot. It would be set back a little ways. Apparently, there used to be a snow cone truck that used to park in there, so the electrical infrastructure is there already for plug-in.
Yeah.
So that makes it a bit easier. And the idea is to have it away from the storefronts, because then these spots don't get taken up by non-electric cars and non-charging cars. So the electric car users prefer that the spots be placed further away from storefronts.
But it help. Businesses, they can run in and go to Grumpy's or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea there again would be at least 1 DC fast charge and level 2 chargers, so that people also in neighborhoods around the shopping center could charge overnight there as well. And that's one condition that BG&E puts on this program, is that the chargers be available to neighborhoods.
So are they looking to put some in downtown on City Dock, or are we waiting?
Yes, we still are looking at City Dock. The idea of charging stations was brought before the Historic Planning Commission last summer, and they wanted to learn more. It was given an invitation to learn more, and lots of concerns about what they would look like, keeping the hoses out of the way, the attachments out of the way of pedestrians, visual clutter is always a concern. So where they could go on City Dock, whether they'd have to be around the corner, kind of not in front of Market House, which was BG&E's preferred location, but perhaps closer in front of Mission Barbecue, but not, it had have to be in an area where the reimagining of City Dock would not be occurring.
I'm just thinking of city-owned land. Could we think of getting one in the planning of the Truxton Pool parking lot, the new pool?
Possibly. We already have one at the rec center. So we have charging stations at the rec center right now. So that location, that's the pool area is not off the table, but we're trying to put them in different areas of the city as much as possible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a spot in West Annapolis as well.
So do you need an account with BGE to use their chargers?
So there's an app that you would download, and it's not free. You do have to pay for the electricity. And then another initiative that OEP is looking into is to change the fleet over to electric cars and also other alternative fuel vehicles going forward with replacement vehicles as they need to be replaced in our fleet.
Is it frustrating for you to see the circulator where it could be replaced with electric shuttles?
Well, absolutely. You could have a small, it's never full, so you could have a smaller vehicle, and more cities are going to electric buses. The concern was the maintenance of them and the reliability of electric buses, but the technology is changing so quickly every year. They're getting more and more reliable, and there are city of Los Angeles and cities in Texas and California. There's many cities, Seattle, Boston, New York, are electrifying their bus fleets.
And it's just a touchy subject with Rick Gordon, who manages SP Plus, and you just can't penetrate it. But what I look at is like the math of all the gasoline you basically lost going down Duke of Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like dead space. Nobody picks it up or gets dropped off on Duke of Gloucester, but yet that's half their route, or maybe a third of their route.
Those buses were awful biking behind when I used to commute to work on my bike. It's just, all right, any other questions?
Yeah, can we talk about the moose on the table? Groundhog's Day is well behind us. We have some legislation that, to me, the heart of that legislation is getting a signature line on some of the environmental aspects of permits. It feels to me like, I'd like to know how it's working for you now, and if you have any thoughts about how we can go about getting you more fully integrated into the permit sign-off process.
We've had some conversations with the city manager, new city manager.
Okay.
About this. I'm not sure how much is ready for public consumption.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, it's on my mind.
Working well, though. The new city manager and I have already worked very closely in the past when he was director of public works, and he is integrating me more closely in his current work, and we anticipate that will continue. And as Alderman Savage said, I'm not sure how much of it is for public consumption at the moment.
I don't know. I'd be happy to talk to the
I will
committee about
I'll
it.
wait for the breaking news.
Yes. So, Alderman, you wanted to add this?
Yes. So on plastic bags, we had a couple of us had a text from Alderman Littman, basically saying, should we wait till we see what the state does before we move forward? And in fact, state law may obviate what we want to do. Certainly, we would have to be consistent with state law. I agree with you, Alderman Savage. We might want to be stronger than state law. I haven't been following how it's doing in the legislature, but I think we need to think about that. Think about how we're relating to the state law.
What about the county? Sorry.
I don't think it's on their radar, but
What, the county?
is the county considering anything, or they just
The
not?
county is not at the moment putting their own law forward, ordinance forward, but they are very interested in doing so. They are sort of looking to see what the city was going to do first, and now there's this very strong movement that's getting stronger in, the General Assembly for the state bill. I still hear that that the state bill has a 50-50 chance. After attending the hearing in the House last week, it seemed a bit stronger than 50-50 to me. It looked like there was a lot of bipartisan support for it. There were several amendments floated. The Maryland Retailers Association very, very much would like to see a state bill rather than a patchwork bill, as they said it, of
that makes
different
sense.
fees and different, thicknesses of bags, or no plastic bags versus certain thicknesses, just for their own, for the members of their association, to make things easy for them in the application of a plastic bag bill. The MACO, the Association of Maryland Counties, they also seem to prefer that approach as well. Of course, the state bill has, as opposed to the one that Alderman Savage introduced, which is a straight out ban on all plastic bags, the state bill allows for plastic bags of 4 mil and thicker, if you wanted to. But there's a charge of 10 cents on paper bags, whereas Alderman Savage's is a 20 cent, and that 10 cents would go back to the city and 10 cents would go to the retailer to cover the average cost of a paper bag, grocery-sized one being about 10 cents.
And the state's 10 cents would all go to the grocer, where
Right.
the one being proposed that we've sponsored is 10 cents to the grocer, 10 cents to the city.
Right. Now, the county did come to the House hearing and presented testimony on the costs to the county of plastic bags. So how much it costs them to do public education about the fact that we don't recycle plastic bags, litter cleanup, that kind of information. And it's in the, I think it was in the $100,000 range, or it's very close to that range of costs. I asked Marsha Patrick for some information about what it costs the city, what plastic bag litter cleanup costs. I know that she told me that there hasn't been tracked, like how much of our litter cleanup is plastic bags, but she said she could try to get me some rough numbers. But she said the education campaign that Public Works did last year when we took the plastic bags out of curbside recycling, she said that was over $17,000. And having plastic bags in the waste stream will continue to cost us money in terms of litter cleanup, in terms of public education about what goes into curbside recycling. If there are plastic bags in a can, it basically contaminates, if you will, the entire can. They won't take it. And they have to dump that can out in the general trash. And then there's, I know there's been some studies by other jurisdictions, like the one out of Los Angeles showed that the litter cleanup from plastic bags is about 17 cents a bag. It is pretty high when you consider all the number of bags.
Alderwoman.
Yeah, I think it's just cursory review, I guess, or anecdotally, it's gotten worse with the recycling stipulation that we don't recycle plastic.
Right.
People are just throwing it all in the trash. I mean, it's, and a lot of that is rentals that don't know our law, and they don't go, to Grawls and drop off their, plastic
Right.
in that box, which is a really good avenue. But it's gotten worse. I mean, I see plastic in regular garbage in lieu of, just not there at all. So and I think across the board, I think it's a no-brainer about the plastic bags. I think the political will is there on every level. It's
Right.
just,
Well,
you don't have political will on the plastic bag.
no, the number one source of emails for me on plastic bags
Yeah.
is dog owners.
Dog owners? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they
So
make the
What are they going to use to?
they can still use pet waste bags, the ones that are designated pet waste bags, which are usually compostable bags, or should be.
They are.
Or the newspaper bags.
But
They
where
are
are
not covered by Alderman Savage's proposed
Okay, but
ordinance,
that's
nor
what
the
they're
state
worried
bill,
about.
because they're prepackaged. So we're talking about plastic bags at checkout. So what you have all the things you buy and you put them in a plastic bag. Things that are already prepackaged. Plastic that's prepackaged, like a Ziploc bag, something like that even. A trash bag, whether it's the big heavy duty ones or a kitchen trash bag. Those are already prepackaged, so those are still allowed. I know another concern that's been brought up is newspaper film. That's not that does not come from a retailer,
So
that's not covered either.
Those.
Yeah.
In my staff report, I
Increased
pointed those
subscription
things out. I produced my staff report to David Gerald yesterday, and I pointed those things out, the things that are not covered and why, and also some issues that I saw that were concerning that I just wanted to point out.
But
to you.
these dog owners know this is just like the Second Amendment. Once you get your nose in the tent flap, you're going to take away their dog bags and their guns.
Did you, Shaggy should check with our, the parks have those disposals, and as much as I use them, I don't know if they're compostable. They come out of, the Parks and Recs puts them in.
Yeah, I don't know.
give it to
A
you?
lot of the,
Do you
I was
know?
looking for my dog and dogs now, and some of them are, you have to be careful. The boxes say compostable. The packaging is compostable, but not the bag itself.
Right.
But they do have bio bags, which are actually
Right.
biodegradable, composed to compostable bags, which actually have to be composed in an industrial facility. And if you throw compostable bags out the window or in your recycling, it's still going to gum up the works and take forever to compose. Biodegradable will decompose pretty quickly. So we did have a conversation about whether or not to include those compostable or biodegradable bags, but we ended up deciding just not to even allow them at the point of sale, just because they still do contribute to the recycling and the problems at the recycling plants, and also end up.
I did note in your proposed ordinance that you have delivery and pickup as well. I understand the pickup. You are banning plastic bags at the point of sale as well as delivery and pickup. I understand pickup, but delivery is like, so if you order something from Subway or whatever and they deliver it to your house through Grubhub or something, that's not the customer's choice that they're bringing you a bag. So what are you supposed to tell them when they show up at your doorstep? No, I don't want the bag, and I'm not paying you a fee for it. So
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have
wasn't
to
sure
look at
exactly
that
how that was
again.
going to work.
Yeah, I think you mean the source, but if the source is within the city limits, but
Yeah, we'll have to.
control it.
At our next meeting, we'll have a chance to get into some of these details.
So in my staff report, I highlighted some of the things that I noted that were of concern.
Okay.
And I know that Jody Dickinson had some from the finance perspective as well.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to find an estimate of how much we might be able to accumulate from the fee. Like, will it be enough to even pay for some reusable bags or to pay for some of the cleanups?
Right.
If it's only 20,000 square feet or larger, I'm hearing that's going to really reduce the amount. That's a really limited number of stores.
So I
who
asked
even pay
Hope
the
Stewart
fee.
for the information about how many businesses we have that are 20,000 square feet, smaller than 20,000 square feet because of the exemption you have in your proposed ordinance. And it's
Just for the
of the
fee
retail, there's
exemption.
about 376 retail establishments in Annapolis, city of Annapolis, and about 356 of them are under 20,000 square feet. So we would only be really capturing the larger grocery stores, and that would be exempting out the things like 7-Eleven and Royal Farms, which generate a lot of plastic bags.
Yeah, I was gonna talk to you about that, because that's 20,000 square feet is big.
It's really
I
big.
think that
It's
in
big.
there because that's the minimum, that's the lowest level for grocery stores in the county.
Oh, okay.
I just kind of,
'Cause, yeah.
I knew that's something we may want to
Because
revisit, but it was,
storefronts downtown are 20 feet wide, so you're probably 100 feet deep.
but again,
So it's-
everybody will have to comply with the ban. It's just the fee that they'd be exempted
Yeah.
from.
And Joel brought up a good point. I don't know if you're a cigar
Although-
smoker, why you brought this up, Joel, but he said, when you buy cigars, they generally
Yeah.
seal them in a Ziploc bag. And I don't know if they always put them in a plastic bag too, but whether that would be considered at point of sale, because
Yeah,
when
we
they
may
get
need
them
to-
out of the humidor.
We may need to look at that too.
Yeah.
One question about the state bill, that 10 cents, is that on every single retail store in the state?
Yes, they don't have a square footage exemption in that
Okay.
bill.
So that's one difference. Okay, well, then what's the date of the end of the session? It's April something, right? April,
It's early April, it's like the 9th or
I don't know the
6th or
date,
something like
yeah.
that.
remember?
Yeah,
End of the
they're-
General Assembly?
Sign die is like the 6th or something.
Yeah. they're
April
halfway
6th?
Through now.
I think it's around then.
Because they may very
have to look it
well,
up.
the earliest we could get this passed, assuming we can even get it through committees quickly,
Well, what?
would be it would go to hearing at Monday.
When is it?
Yeah.
And then it would go to committees in March, and then we could probably get it second council meeting in March, it would come up for a vote.
April 6th is.
It is April 6th?
April 6th.
Okay.
So, to the Alderman's point, at this point, it doesn't look like we'll necessarily, unless they don't pass theirs or vote on, I should say, until late March.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to just kind of stay on our toes in terms of what to do. If they do pass it early, we may need to just figure out what we can. And I don't know if there's going to be any kind of preemption. I think you said that the
So that's a
AG's office
huge
is still.
issue, is the preemption is hotly
yeah.
debated. There are some delegates that from the House hearing that said that they're insisting on a preemption clause.
They want preemption.
They want preemption. Some of them do.
I don't know what that means.
It essentially says the state law, the cities and counties can't do anything different than the state law.
Oh, okay.
But so there's a problem with Montgomery County and others who are raising money for various environmental causes through the fee. And so this would prevent them from being able to, or the question is, would this
Right.
prevent them from being able to
So
have
normally
their
when you
fee?
talk about preemption with regard to environmental laws, states can do things that, I mean, counties and cities can take measures in their laws that are more strict. So when you talk about pollution, you talk about, well, higher level of treatment or not being able to emit a certain volume. Or in this case, we could talk about, ours is a flat out bag ban, whereas the state bill is allowing bags of a certain thickness to continue to be distributed. Ours would be stricter because it says, well, no bag. But if they have a preemption clause that says we can't have a stricter law, then our law is done. We can't have
can't do
a strong.
anything.
I never knew that
So-
existed. Yeah.
So some of the counties and
Republican
cities.
states often do that.
Yeah.
Some states have passed preemption laws ahead of time to say that
Whatever you do,
municipalities
or-
can't do anything regarding plastic bags.
So the question is whether, and the AG's office has been asked this several weeks ago, and they still haven't rendered an opinion. I'm wondering where it is. If their fee is higher, so like Montgomery County, they have a fee, then they use part of it for education purposes. And some of DC uses it for education and restoration purposes of their rivers. Is that a stricter law? And can it be preempted? Because it's a fee, it's not addressing the pollution, it's the revenue and how you use the revenue. So it's an interesting question, and the AG's office hasn't provided an answer to that yet.
Yeah.
And that's a real concern for those counties and cities, because they want to continue to offer those programs and that education and the restoration, and they don't want to lose that ability.
So is there protection from that? Can you
from being
appeal?
preempted?
I have not looked into it any further. I was waiting for the AG's office to render their opinion and then see if I would look into it more after that, or ask our Office of Law to look into it. It's an interesting question.
Is there a legal term for the preemption where you can go stronger versus the preemption where you can't do anything weaker?
Well, it depends. If the state has a preemption law, then you cannot enact a law that's stricter.
Yeah. And typically Maryland.
But typically, you can enact a stricter law. As long as yours meets the minimum threshold of the state law, you can go stricter.
And that's not currently in the bill as written.
Oh, the
No.
key thing is when there is a conflict. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So since you both are co-sponsors on this, I think my inclination is kind of just to mosey on forward.
Move forward. We can
But
always.
because I was kind of originally thinking, well, if we got this passed quick enough, it could help influence
Right.
what happens in the state. But at this point, I don't know if that's going to happen. So if there are all these questions, as co-sponsors, what do you want to do? Are you inclined to kind of postpone this until we figure out what the state does, or should we move forward with the public hearing at least and figure out what's going?
I think we should move forward.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know when it gets to committee, but maybe we'll have an idea at least of where the state is headed
Yeah,
when it comes to us, and we can always amend it.
The Senate hearing is tomorrow. I'm unable to go because I'll be at the Climate Leadership Academy.
Oh,
The city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County have their 2 days tomorrow.
I'll be there too.
Oh, you're going to be there as well? Okay,
So what's the
My other
hearing?
job.
Maybe I can go to the hearing.
so the hearing's at 1 o'clock, and this is the Senate hearing. But there's a number of other bills on the agenda,
sure,
and you
yeah.
won't know until you get there. They don't announce until 1 o'clock. And once you find out, you could go, back home or wherever you need to go and then come back.
Yeah.
I think that they're not going to allow as long as testimony as they did in the House. It took several hours. They had 5 panels of support, and then the opposition had 1 panel. But it'll be interesting to see what the feeling is
Oh,
in
no,
the Senate.
we have a work session tomorrow, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
At 3, but yeah.
This is at 1.
Will you be at the work session? I can't make the work session.
I probably won't be able to make it. Is there any other thoughts on this?
Oh.
All right. All right. Thank you, Director
You're welcome.
Wild. I don't have anything else on the agenda. Anything else?
Well, we have
go to the-
AEC.
Oh, do Mr. Giblin, do you have anything else you'd like to report from the Environmental Commission?
No, what we're working on is our report.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else for good of the order?
Move, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Joelle, I